Well, let's begin with U.S.-Russia relations. The U.S. anti-missile defense system has been a sticking point between the two countries for a long time now. But we just heard today some very strong words from Russian President Dmitry Medvedev aimed at the U.S. Now, we'll talk about them in a second, but let me play what the Russian president warned could happen if the U.S. continues to move forward with missile defense plans along Russia's border.
Russia will deploy contemporary strike systems in the west and south in order to prevent fire damage from U.S. missile systems deployed in Europe. The deployment of the Iskander missile system in the Kaliningrad region will be one such step. If the situation develops in an unfavorable way, Russia will reserve the right to cease further steps in the area of disarmament and arms control. Moreover, given the inextricable link between strategic, offensive and defensive weapons, reasons could emerge for Russia's withdrawal from the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty.
All right, so Russia's saying it would pull out of the START treaty and stop nuclear disarmament if the U.S. continues to deploy its missile defense shield in Europe. So what is going on here? Well, joining me for more, Asia Times correspondent Pepe Escobar. So Pepe, as we know, this treaty signed back in April of 2010, this was seen as a reset in relations between the two countries. Now that agreement is seen as at risk. What are your thoughts on this announcement?
Forget about reset. There was a PR coup. And the Russian leadership has just understood over the past few months that it was a PR coup. Everything is interlinked. What happened in Libya, what NATO is planning for Syria, the NATO plan to dominate the Mediterranean, these, what used to be some interceptors in Czech Republic, they're now in Romania, 24 interceptors, and a huge radar station in Turkey. The American version, it's directed against Iran, which is completely absurd. Every geopolitical analyst knows this is directed against Russia. And this is not the Obama administration. This is a Pentagon program. It's part of the so-called full spectrum dominance, which is the official Pentagon doctrine since at least 2002. So they should have a mechanism to discuss this as adults in the NATO-Russia Council. They're going to meet in 2 weeks. So let's see after 2 weeks if they really can discuss this. Because the Russians are correct. They know this is against Russian territory. It would be the same as Russia installing a missile defense system in Cuba all over again. Bay of Pigs all over again. You know, it doesn't make sense at all.
One of the biggest criticisms coming out of Russia and some other countries is the fact that, the U.S. already has missile shields in many other countries. Afghanistan, Israel has plenty as well. So why does the U.S. need to have this missile shield in Europe and particularly along Russia's border? I think that seems to be one of the biggest criticisms. Very true what you say, how so many of these things are connected. And I want to talk about several other geopolitical issues. While I have you here, let's talk about Syria and how Moscow and Beijing have warned about the use of any military action, how that won't be acceptable in Syria. What do you think, Pepe, is the main interest in Western countries on Syrians' human rights, and why Moscow and China, why are they opposing these actions?
Look, okay, there are human rights abuses in Syria, of course. It is a very dreadful police state. That's not in question. What's in question are the methods employed by the Europeans and the Americans to bring down the Assad government. It's Libya 2.0. It's the same thing. And in fact, if you go back to the beginning of this month, Ivo Daalder, the U.S. ambassador to NATO, he said explicitly the roadmap. What is the roadmap for Syria? Basically, is to recognize the opposition, the Syrian National Council, which is already a goal. And in fact, a few minutes ago, the French are saying they're going to do exactly that. Try to create the impression that Assad is going to go for a human massacre in Homs or in Hama in Syria. Get a vote from the GCC and the Arab League, which nowadays is the same thing, controlled by Saudi Arabia. And then that's the ultimate point that they're not going to get it. They need some kind of consensus at the UN. This means Russia and China. And Russia and China already voted, and they say, no way. Red line stops in Syria. From the Russian point.
That does sound a lot like the Libya 2.0, a little deja vu here. A lot of people predicting a lot of people predicting, you know, if something does happen with Syria, you know, what's next? Well, Iran is next. So I want to talk to you about Iran and the renewed talk about increasing sanctions on Iran. I know we saw Secretary of State Clinton speaking about this. Much of this, of course, fallout from the release of the report from the International Atomic Energy Agency. I want to get your thoughts, Pepe. I know this is an area that you've covered, that you know a lot about. Your concerns about the U.S. reaction here regarding Iran.
Look, the IAEA report was debunked completely by some of the best geopolitical analysts that we can find anywhere, including Seymour Hersh, who writes for The New Yorker, of course, our friend Gareth Porter, who writes for IPS. We tried at Asia Times on our side as well. Look, it's bogus. It was Yukiya Amano, the Japanese, which a WikiLeaks cable already proved that he is basically a yes man for U.S. designs at the IAEA. And people who work at the IAEA, inspectors themselves and physicists, they said this is completely absurd. The IAEA is being diverted towards a political role. And we are a technical body, which is completely absurd. Okay, so the piece that I wrote recently for Asia Times is basically, if you want to get to Tehran, you have to go through Damascus. And that's the plan nowadays, because everybody knows that the U.S. is not going to launch a war against Iran. No way, and not in an electoral year. Number two, Israel cannot do it by themselves. And the Obama administration is against it. And most people at the Pentagon are against it as well. So the only way would be, okay, let's try Damascus first, destabilize the regime, which destabilizes Hezbollah as well, which destabilizes the Tehran-Damascus axis. And then we think about Iran probably after the presidential elections. And if you watch the foreign policy debate of the Republicans yesterday, and you saw all those 8 wackos saying what they're going to do, the first thing they're going to do is war against Iran at the beginning of 2012.
Everyone except Ron Paul says that. Let's get the facts straight. And I think John Huntsman seems to be a little wary of that as well.
Yes.
We got our own Foreign Policy 101 with you right here on RT. Asia Times correspondent Pepe Escobar.
Thank you.